Hello and welcome to the Nontraditional Podcast. I'm Cristina.
And I'm Sam.
And we are the Non-Traditionalists. On this podcast, we talk about non-traditional living, whether that's something that you do with most of your life or just some of your life or even one part of your life. Sam and I, how we live non-traditionally is we live full-time in a 34-foot RV travel trailer with our 2 dogs and 2 cats, which is what we're going to be talking about today, is how we are traveling and living in a small space with many, many furry creatures. We've always been animal people.
Oh my God, yes.
We love animals.
It's true. Our first were Leonard and Sheldon.
Leonard and Sheldon. Those are my childhood dogs. You had dogs growing up too, right?
Yeah, I had like 4 or 5.
Yeah, because you always talk about like living on the land with the dogs.
Yeah. Had a couple Jack Russell Terriers, had a German Shepherd, Schnauzers.
Yeah, so you grew up with animals. I actually did not. We didn't get our first. I had a fish. I don't know if that like super counts.
A hamster or was it a gerbil?
It was a guinea pig.
I always want to call it a hamster, a gerbil, and it's a guinea pig. Okay.
Yes, guinea pig is, I mean, very much like a gerbil and a hamster, just much bigger comparatively.
That makes sense.
So yeah, my first animal was a guinea pig, and then I had a fish. But I didn't get dogs until I was 15, and we never had cats growing up because my mom is very allergic to pet dander. So that's why our first dogs were our Schnauzers that I got when I was 15. And I had those all the way up until a couple of years ago. So they transitioned into being Sam and my dogs. So we've always been big on animals.
Yes. But the first one we got together was
Pepper. Yeah, I think at our peak, we had, when we were living in Savannah, Georgia, we were living in a 2-story house at that point. We had 4 dogs. And at one point, we had 2 adult cats and a small litter of kittens.
Yeah.
That were all in the house. So we had 4 dogs and like 9 cats.
Yeah.
All at the same time. I think that was our peak, which we'll get into that story because that litter includes our 2 cats.
Yeah.
And we then adopted out the rest of them.
Yes.
So I think we have always been big on animals, even when we chose to downsize in space. I think our first experience with living in a small space with animals was when we moved to Florida. The first part of living in Florida, we got an Airbnb before we had decided exactly where we wanted to live.
It was like 400 square feet.
I think it was 450.
Yeah, 450.
And we had 4 dogs and 2 cats.
Yes, we did.
In that space. So you want to talk about that experience?
Yeah, so we had the 2 Schnauzers, we had our standard poodle, an orange cat, and a tortoiseshell cat, which is Steve, and then Pepper, which is my dog. She's a lab pit mix. And we went from a king size bed to a queen size bed from 1,400 square feet to
450 square feet.
And the nice thing about it was it had a backyard, or
it did have a yard
for us to let the dogs out in, so we weren't always having to take them on walks. But with Florida, it was so hot, there were only certain times we could really let them be out.
Mm-hmm.
So the dogs were constantly
underfoot.
I mean, they were underfoot, they were understimulated, so they're bored, and dogs get really kind of pissy. And so it was definitely a learning experience.
Oh my God, yeah.
Florida heat was rough.
Prepared us for moving into the RV. We didn't realize that's what it was doing at the time.
I think it's part of the reason I don't want to live in 95-degree weather.
For sure.
Ever again, like constantly. Here and there, it's fine. But yeah, that was really a sweet setup. I liked it a lot. It just was so little room. But it worked.
Yeah.
It definitely worked. We didn't hate it.
No.
We were able to, we probably weren't prepared for how much the dogs were going to need to still walk. I certainly wasn't. Because I wasn't being incredibly supportive at that point. And so Cristina was having to share the brunt of all that work.
Yeah.
And we couldn't really let all the dogs out at the same time. Just the 2 big dogs and then the 2 little dogs by themselves.
Yeah, because the 2 Schnauzers were just so much older than our 2 big dogs. it just wasn't like really safe for them because they would just like occasionally get bowled over because they just moved a lot slower.
Yeah,
So
I
we
just
had
worried
to
that
really like keep them separate. But yeah, I would say that was like our first experience with a lot of animals in a small space. And it was okay. It's just funny to me, like thinking back to that, because the RV is probably about the same size, about
maybe smaller.
450 square feet. But the way it's laid out, like that wasn't like a very like open concept, that Airbnb we were in, and it felt really cramped.
Yeah.
And now granted, we're down to 2 dogs and 2 cats. Both the schnauzers have passed, but it feels so much less cramped in the RV than it did in the Airbnb, which I just think is really funny. And it really just comes down to like architecture, I think. And we were different people. We have less stuff. There's lots of like, there are things that are different, but like, yeah, it's just funny to me how like those are pretty much the same spaces and they feel completely different.
Yeah. And I remember when we first started talking about like camp life or RV life or van life was really what I first brought up, because that was the only thing I really understood. And we had one dog at the time. That was when we didn't even have the schnauzers with us all the time. Sometimes they were with your mom. And you were like, babe, that's not enough space for Pepper and us. And now it's like, well, maybe a van wasn't.
A van would not be, but
Probably
this
not.
actually is.
This is plenty of space. And, you know, like everywhere we stay, there's a dog park. I will say the one thing with the Airbnb that was rough was there was not a dog park.
There was not a dog park nearby.
Not nearby.
So we had this
constantly had to
little
walk them.
outdoor space, but it wasn't a lot of space for them to run around. And I think the thing that we've learned, and this is where we can kind of like go into, especially the dogs, like breaking it down, is we have really spent the last few years educating ourselves around dogs and dog behavior. And a lot of that started with the fact that my standard poodle we actually got as a service dog. So I got him from a breeder who like breeds dogs to be service dogs. So she breeds dogs based on like health and temperament. And then he immediately went into a program where he was living with us, but we were working very closely with a dog trainer over the course of 2 years to train him to be a medical alert dog. And we learned so much about dog behavior in that time. And then we just have continued like self-educating since then.
Yeah.
And I think that like if you're going into a situation where you have animals and you want to either pursue a smaller space, even if you're just thinking about getting a place that doesn't have a backyard, I know that's a big obstacle for people with pets and comes up in conversation a lot. But I think learning about your dog's breed
and what they need to be stimulated
is the best starting point.
Yeah.
Because that I think is like one of the first questions that people ask us, especially when they find out that we live in an RV. They ask us if we have kids, which we do not, and we are not planning on having children.
Hell no.
You know, then they ask, we have pets. And when I tell them about our pets, they're like, you know, how do the dogs like the RV? That's the first question people ask us. And it's always said in that tone of like,
are you taking care of your dogs?
Like, are your dogs okay? Like in the RV? Like that concept is wild to people.
Yeah, it's really just about scheduling too. You know, like first person to get up takes the dogs on a 25, 30-minute walk, sometimes longer, to get them first to use the restroom immediately.
Right.
2, to keep them on a schedule so they know what to expect. And 3, just because they need the exercise, which is good for both of us too, because it keeps us on a schedule.
Yeah.
It took only 5 years for Cristina to get me to start being on a schedule with the dogs. But anyway, I digress.
Well, and I think that, so it's like, you know, when we first had dogs, you might hear one of our cats playing with her favorite toy in the background. It's that little like 3-tiered ball on a track thing. Our orange cat loves it. Her little hunting self. She's so cute right now. I think it also was like in phases. You know, it's like the Airbnb taught us that we could live in a small space with dogs. We had lived in apartments a couple times with the small dogs. Florida was the first time after the Airbnb that we lived in an apartment with the big dogs.
Yes.
And I always was like, well, I just don't want to have to take them out on a leash every single time they need to go out. Like that was about me. That wasn't about the dog. But we moved into the apartment anyway because it was like the right move at the time.
Right.
And I found out that it really wasn't bad. No. And I think I very quickly got used to it. The dogs actually, I think, loved that we came outside with them every single time they went out. They always wanted us to be outside with them, even when we had a backyard. they wanted us to go out. So it's like we found that they were actually happier because we were spending more time together.
And it was good for us physically to go on these walks.
And it was good for us. And so I feel like those two experiences, like going from the Airbnb in small space and then getting used to taking the dogs out, like prepared us for living in the RV with dogs.
Yeah, well, and I think that brings up a good point, though. The whole people thinking a dog isn't that big of a commitment. It's a big commitment.
Oh, it's a huge commitment.
But we built our lives around having dogs because we love dogs and we love cats. And that's, what I don't want to call it a hobby because it's like a little soul here, but it's part of our lifestyle.
Yeah.
Is being a dog owner because they bring us so much joy and we can take care of them. And there's something beautiful in that symbiotic relationship. But it truly is something, if you're considering, you are going to get to build your life around them and build your lifestyle around owning them, because otherwise I think it can be really easy to be abusive to an animal.
Yeah, without meaning
neglect.
to be.
And
neglect.
I'm talking about neglect abuse.
It's just neglect.
And that's just like, think about our own personal relationships with our families or our parents or whoever took care of you. That relationship is always, I guess it always comes up, like, were you neglected? Did you feel neglected? That kind of thing. It's a really big trauma point for people, and dogs feel the same thing.
Yeah. I think it's funny because they can tell that we're talking about them, because normally when we're like recording, they're pretty chill and they don't like bother us, but they are like all up in our business right now. I'm like, they can tell that we are talking about them, which is so funny.
So true. They're normally just ignoring us.
But actually, the other thing for us is having pets was one of the things that motivated us to move into this lifestyle, because Sam and I love to travel. We want to travel full time. That's something we've always talked about. And doing that with animals in any other way is nearly impossible. We were like, we can't bear the idea of leaving our animals behind. We don't want to have to board them every time we want to go somewhere. And even though like we were able to find places where we could travel with the dogs, finding a place that would let us bring 2 dogs and 2 cats was always difficult. It's difficult to find a place that would let us live there.
Yeah, I mean, our small dog is
2 cats.
48 pounds, and our big dog, which is the same height, is 88 pounds or whatever. Yeah. So that's, 40 pounds is normally the limit for no problem.
Right. So like not only were we having trouble finding places to live that would allow us to have the animals we wanted, but traveling was a whole other obstacle. Yeah. So we were like, for us, like they're going to get to actually go with us when we want to go places.
Everywhere we go, period.
Everywhere we go. They don't have to miss out.
We can talk about kind of how we traveled up here and the, what is it called that you bought for them? The sling? The
sling, yeah.
For the back of the truck.
For sure. And that was like another thing, like upgrading our car also benefited the dogs. Before we had an SUV because we actually upgraded to an SUV because of our dogs. But even that like was not, when you have like 2 very big dogs, there's not a lot of space. So the first thing that we did, so before we bought the RV, we got a truck because we needed a car. And then the first thing that we did was make that space as comfortable as we could for the dogs. So that's when we got like a saddle. I guess it's a saddle sling.
Yeah, it's a saddle sling. That's what it is. Yeah.
With a hard bottom and then like a soft insert so the dogs can fully stretch out in the truck.
Yeah.
So if you are somebody who wants to travel with your animals, even if you're not like in an RV capacity or traveling full time, I highly recommend those 2 things. Like the extra space it gives them. Like my poodle was always super uncomfortable in cars, like just never fully settled. And now that he has the space where he can like fully stretch out his whole body, he just like goes straight to sleep. They like are gorgeous on long car rides. Like on the way up here, we're traveling for like 8 hours a day sometimes, and they were totally fine. We would stop at Love's. That's a good tip. Love's travel stops, because, a lot of truckers travel with animals. They are starting to put dog parks in almost all of their travel stops.
Yeah, that's just great.
So we were able to stop and let the dogs run around for a little bit on our way up here. So like they do great in the car. That was never really like a concern for us.
But just having them be comfortable. And the cool thing about the sling is because we have the 2 cats right behind driver's seat and passenger seat, since it goes over the like foot area, floor space, the cats can be right underneath where the dogs can't get to them. And not that the dogs would bother them, but if you have like an animal that would, or a dog that would, it keeps them separated.
Yeah.
when we're traveling. So they have their own space. Because for me, I think, yes, dogs love to have their space, but they're good with like being right on top of you.
Yeah.
Most time cats like to be secluded.
They want the
And
option.
they want the option, but
They
yeah,
want to be near you when they want to be near you, and they want you to leave them alone otherwise.
yeah. And so I think when you're traveling, it's much easier to give them like all that space. And we're going to build something where they can kind of tunnel to each other if they want.
Yes. We have to train them to be out of their crates in the car.
Yeah, because we're still worried they're going to just run away, which I doubt they would.
No, but we want them to be comfortable and feel safe and secure. I mean, they are obviously less experienced with the car than the dogs are. The dogs were comfortable in the car before because we take them most places that we go. So like any opportunity that we have, like if we're going to a place with an outdoor patio or we're going on a hike, like we look for dog-friendly hikes.
Yeah.
We are very big about taking them everywhere we can because we want them to also experience life and not be stuck in the house all day.
Yeah, and maybe eventually the cats will be adventure kitties, but I don't think that Steve would want to do that. I think Stormy might want to.
So let's get into like the specifics on the dogs. So, because this is like what people always comment on is like dogs need spaces to run around. So I'll start with Walnut.
Okay.
I feel like we kind of mentioned earlier, learning about the breed of your dog, what your dog was initially bred for.
Yeah, what job specific breeding did they have?
Is I think a really important part of dog ownership now. It's something that like is new to us as a concept of like how to, like this is part of what we learned in the dog training. So like Walnut is a standard poodle, which from my understanding, and of course there are always like a few different origin stories for all this kind of stuff.
No one really knows.
But both the breeds that we have were working dogs.
Yes.
So
sure.
like poodles in a lot of cultures became leisure dogs and like symbols of wealth. But their original start was, from my understanding, on Spanish warships, like carrying messages, like they're really good in water, but they like having tasks. So that is one of the reasons why they make such good service dogs, because they are highly intelligent, trainable, and enjoy doing tasks. So that kind of mental stimulation is really important for my poodle. And he gets that pretty automatically through his like job as my medical alert dog. So I don't have to put too much effort now into making sure that he gets that. But they also are sprinters. They like big open spaces to run. And so that's true for Pepper too. She is a lab blue heeler pit mix, and especially the blue heeler. We'll get into that. But that is one of the reasons why Sam and I have prioritized every campground that we're going to be staying at for long term. We've agreed one of the minimum requirements is they have to have a dog park.
Yeah, or one like right around the corner, but really it needs to be on the campground.
It needs to be walkable, I would say.
Yeah, there you go.
It needs to be walkable. It needs to be something that can be a part of our daily routine because we've chosen to be in a place without a yard. So we get to still fulfill that need to be able to like run and sprint. And oh my God, you should see Walnut when he gets up to full speed. It's quite hilarious. And he just runs in a circle and he has the biggest smile on his face. Mm-hmm. He looks like the most awkward antelope you've ever seen in your entire life. But that is our commitment. So it's like we agreed that when we were going to be living in a smaller space, we were going to not have a yard for them anymore. That we got to have a commitment to be close enough to a dog park to still give them that. So, and we'll break down, once we kind of talk about each of the animals, we'll break down our routine with them. But yeah, so that is Walnut the poodle. Pepper, I don't know if you want to talk about
Pepper just wants to play fetch every moment of her life.
Yeah.
She'll play till she passes out. Like, she'll play till there's like just saliva running all the way down her face. Like, she's hilarious.
Oh my God,
she's actually us talking about it right now. She's like,
oh, are we going?
She's like, are we going yet? Are we going to go?
It's almost time. She can tell it's almost time. Yeah, they're on such a schedule.
Yeah, after we do this podcast, I'll probably take him to the dog park and run him. But I'm going to bring water with me. That's another thing because it's 85 degrees outside. Mm-hmm. So we got to bring water. And I just think about it like this. A lot of people have commitments to working out 5 days a week. Our sacrifice is, yes, we both work out or we have our routines. But if it's between us working out or the dog getting to get worked out, the dogs get breastfed. Like,
Absolutely.
there are kiddos.
Yes.
And yes, you are. And so because of that, that's one of the sacrifices we'll make, because if Pepper doesn't get her day, like Walnut, he can go 3 or 4 days without the dog park probably, and he'd be okay.
Yeah.
He'd be okay.
He gets a lot of
Pepper
other mental
misses it
stimulation.
one day.
She becomes unbearable.
And she's got a great temperament, but she needs that running. She needs the puzzle of going to get the ball. She needs the competition between her and Walnut. She thrives off of it.
Well, and that goes back to understanding your dog's breed.
She's a herder.
She's a retriever.
Or a hunting dog. I'm sorry.
She's a hunting dog.
Right, that's right.
Labs and blue heelers.
She knows we're talking about
her. We're both hunting dogs.
I love her.
Specifically, that's why fetch is so big for her, because you would, shoot the animal,
the duck
and
or whatever.
They would go and get it. So we learned that. We had some behavioral problems with Pepper for a while, and we couldn't figure out. The first step was like giving her more mental stimulation, like doing training sessions, giving her puzzle toys.
Which that helps a little bit.
It does. Like, she's incredibly intelligent. She's too intelligent. But we found that fulfilling that need that was literally bred into her of retrieval has changed this dog.
Yeah, she's so much happier. And
she's
fulfilled.
So much happier.
Which is better for us too.
But that kind of brings me to my point of this talk is whenever we were having this discussion of let's be serious, we have animals. Really, the dogs were our main concern. The cats are cats. No. They are totally fine. Nobody questions having cats in an RV, because cats just want you to feed them and pet them occasionally, give them water, and mostly leave them alone.
And a toy. They want a toy that mentally stimulates them. I will say
they don't need a lot of space.
They don't need a lot of space, though.
Whenever we were having this conversation about the animals in the RV, what it came down to is, even if we had a backyard, they are large enough dogs. They would need at least one walk a day and one play session a day.
Yeah.
No matter what, even if we had a backyard and they got to go and run around every time they went out to use the restroom.
Yeah. So the non-negotiable was going to exist no matter what.
Exactly. So we were as long as we're committed to giving them that, they don't specifically need a backyard. No. The only thing that really becomes inconvenient is having to take them out on a leash every time, which I'm not going to lie, sometimes they get annoyed by. It's people get annoyed by animals, people get annoyed with their kids. That's just the heart of being human. It's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to brush my teeth every day either, but I'm doing it. You know what I mean? I don't want to floss my teeth either, but I do it.
Yeah. So once we realized that was going to be the commitment, no matter what, we realized it really wasn't going to be that big of a difference. And what we found is, like I said earlier, they actually like that we come outside with them every time they need to use the bathroom. They're highly social and communal creatures. They love it. Mm-hmm. So I would say, and I can say this, not just I think, this is the happiest I've ever seen our dogs.
By far.
And cats.
The most relaxed. Yes, the cats too.
And I say, this isn't just our opinion, but this is based on what we've learned about dog body language. How chill they are, except for right now, because we're talking about them.
Literally, we said go outside.
All of their favorite things.
We said all the words that are the trigger words for what we're going to go do. Yeah.
So, but they are the most calm, relaxed, and happy that we have ever seen them, which would be so counterintuitive to a lot of people. But it is they love that they're with us most of the time, that we spend lots of quality time together. They're getting walks. They're getting to be outside. They're getting to explore. Our dogs are living top tier lives right now.
And it's improved our lives.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
And as far as our cats, like Sam said, we really want to train them to be adventure kitties. Steve was born outside. So there was a feral cat in our neighborhood in Savannah, Georgia. She brought us her first litter that we saw her have. She brought to our porch.
And had it at our porch because we were feeding her.
Because we were feeding her. She was a neighborhood cat. Everybody in the neighborhood took care of her. We called her Pumpkin, but everyone in the neighborhood really took care of her. She brought that litter to our porch, but they were all obviously terrified of us. And Steve was the only one who survived. And I spent 4 painstaking months building a relationship with this kitten until she finally let me pick her up. And then I immediately threw her inside my house and was like, you're mine now. And after about a week, she adjusted. And now if we open the door anywhere we live, she runs in the other direction. She's been there, done that, seen that, watched all of my siblings die. I don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah.
So I don't think that we would ever, like, we might try to expose her to the outside, but I don't think Steve is interested in going back outside, and we want to respect that. Her sister, however, Stormy, who came from
much more like her mom.
So that cat got pregnant before we could get her fixed again. We brought her inside to have her next litter, which she let us. She actually ran inside when Sam opened the door. And we were like, okay. And then the next day, there were kittens in our upstairs closet. And we adopted all of them out except for Stormageddon. She is very curious about the outside. So eventually, she will be in a harness and on a leash. And we will let her explore. And maybe, well, then we'll have to keep her and Pepper away from the chipmunks.
Well, I think, yeah, exactly. They just want to eat them all. It's one bite.
Yeah, Pepper is like, literally, I could fit that whole thing in my mouth.
I think also getting some sort of like playgate situation, it would be really cool for the dogs to get to come outside with us.
Yeah. We want them to be able to like sit outside with us. And they do a lot of the time. We just have them on leashes right now. We just need to invest in like a playgate. So I think my whole point is like, people question us having animals and traveling like this a lot.
Yeah.
And the reason we wanted to bring it onto this podcast is to like presence that there is a way to do it responsibly.
Yeah. And I think being a responsible pet owner is actually not traditional. I don't think it is. I think most people get them as an extra and then regret it and they keep it and they don't give them the exercise that they really need. I don't think they end up learning their dogs.
Well, and I think
maybe that's not true, but that's been my experience with meeting owners.
I think that's the key is like, I think that we all as a culture treat dogs as this like broad concept. And there are like a few conversations about like, you know, people are like, you shouldn't have a husky in a warm environment and like things like that about breeds. But we don't do, it's not like common to do a deep dive on your dog and like get to know your dog's breed and what it needs. And like when people pick dogs, they tend to pick dogs based on how they look. You know, they're like, I want an Australian Shepherd because Australian Shepherds are super cute.
Make our dogs look like they don't have energy.
But they are like the working dog of working dogs.
Yeah,
and if you're going to get like a working dog, that dog needs a job.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to give them a job. So like, I think that understanding the breed and choosing based off like temperament and your lifestyle should be the deciding factors.
I agree.
Not
off looks.
What a dog looks like.
Most dogs are gorgeous, and the ones that are ugly are so cute because they're so ugly. So, realistically, like realistically, but if you're going to get a pug, you need to know that they have a lot of problems with their snouts and allergies and skin allergies. So there's these things that people don't research beforehand. Mm-hmm. So it kind of goes back to the very first episode. We talked about research, practice, things like that. I really do believe everything in life, especially a life that you're taking care of, whether it's cat, bird, dog, or fish, they matter. And if you're not going to treat them with that full respect, then don't get one.
Yeah.
No, it's a big commitment. It's an incredible, like beautiful commitment. And it makes me super happy and Cristina super happy, but it's also, it still can be a chore sometimes.
Yeah. And it's agreeing to take care of something that is completely dependent on you and can never directly communicate with you.
Yeah, both these dogs would be super screwed too.
Neither one of us, we are childless by choice. And neither one of us, pretends that having pets is the equivalent of having children.
Absolutely
we completely understand the nuances and differences, which is exactly why we've chosen to have pets and not children.
Yeah.
But that and many reasons, which is a whole other podcast episode.
Yeah, that'll be a different, that's a few episodes probably. Part 1 and 2 and shit.
But we also don't pretend that it's people act like it's the difference between a level 50 commitment and a level 5 commitment. And you are still taking care of a life that is completely dependent on you. And
that will never be able to fully.
And that's my point. That's why I always say, I remember in college, my friends would be like, well, I'm not ready for a kid, so I'm going to get a dog. And I'm like, so you're going to get a baby that never learns English.
Yeah.
Because you're not ready for a kid. That just never made sense to me. But anyway, yeah. So, yes. But yeah. So if you are planning on living in a small space or traveling with your dogs regularly, I think the most important thing is to put them on a schedule to give them a sense of stability and predictability. And that schedule also will benefit and help you as well. So for us, they get walked like within 30 minutes of us waking up. Because, obviously when we first wake up, first we lay in bed for a little bit. Then we need to brush our teeth, get some water, like all of those kinds of morning things. But that shouldn't take longer than 30 minutes, honestly. So that's why we said like within 30 minutes of the first person waking up. And this is also kind of how we divide the responsibility. So the first person to wake up takes out the dogs. That's the agreement. Unless otherwise talked about. Like there's sometimes that I have to wake up super, super early for something random. And if I have to wake up at 5 a.m. and the dogs aren't used to getting up until 8:30, then Sam will take them out when he gets up.
Yeah.
So they get a 30-minute walk in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they go to the bathroom for the first time. And then
we specifically know that one of them needs to go twice.
Yes. We know our dogs' digestive systems. And then whenever they get back, they come back inside and then they get fed at a specific time each day. So in the morning that they get fed, and our dogs are grazers, so they only get fed once a day because we have learned that about our dogs. Like some dogs need to be fed twice a day because they'll eat all their food at once. Our dogs eat their food throughout the day. So we put out their food in the morning.
Yeah.
And then we feed the cats at the same time, their morning meal. And then if they need to go out before their afternoon time, they'll let us know and we'll take them out. They're very good about that. They're very strongly house trained. But then in the afternoon, we go to the dog park for, again, a minimum of 30 minutes. So that's 30 minutes playtime. We take water out there. We have 2 balls. We have a Frisbee. And we go out there and we let them go nuts. After that, they're pretty much pooped and it's nap time for them. And then if we are working that evening, because Sam and I are bartenders, they will also go out right before we leave and then right when we get home. So if it's a day that we're working, whoever gets home first from work will take them out. And depending on how long we've been gone, it's either we haven't been gone that long and they just need to go to the bathroom, or they get another walk at night. And just depending on their energy levels throughout the day, that's something that we manage. And then they go out once more right before we go to bed. And those are like our set times. And we kind of basically take turns. So it's like whoever walked them in the morning, the other person will take them out for their afternoon time.
Right.
Unless there's a previous conversation. That's just always kind of the assumption. And then we talk about it as the day goes on. So that's their schedule. And sticking to that schedule has so greatly benefited their mental health because they have expectations, they have stability, they have routine.
They can count on it.
They know they need the same things that we need. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is how we travel and also ensure that we have happy dogs.
And they're getting impatient. So
and they're getting impatient.
Good time to sign off. And
Pepper said, you have said the words outdoor and ball so many times. When are we going?
Yeah.
Right now, Pepper. So we're going to sign off and do our afternoon time with the dogs. Thank you so much for listening. No matter where you're listening, if you would just take a moment and leave a comment, rate this podcast 5 stars. That really does help like our growth on this podcast so much and our dream of doing this as part of our income.
Also, if you want to know where we got the sling or some of like the
some of the pet stuff
that we really like.
I have it in an Amazon list available on our social media, and I'll link some of the key things that we talked about in this episode below, especially the ones for the cars, because everyone could use. So I'll link those below as well. If you have anything that you would love to hear us talk about on this podcast, any questions, follow-ups, comments, concerns, hopes, dreams, we want to hear them all. You can reach out to us on our social media channels, also linked below, or email us. Also, I have my email in the podcast description. We would love to hear from you. Thanks so much for listening,